Imagine the most extravagant Indian wedding you've ever seen. $200,000 spent on pure luxury. Crystal chandeliers, fresh jasmine garlands flown in from Mumbai, 500 guests dressed in their finest silks and gold jewelry. The bride looks absolutely stunning in her red and gold lehenga that costs more than most people's cars, her hands beautifully decorated with intricate henna patterns. The groom, handsome and successful, comes from one of Toronto's most respected families. Their honeymoon suite, the presidential suite at the prestigious Fairmont Royal York Hotel, decorated with rose petals, flickering candles, and champagne on ice. Everything is picture perfect. The families are over the moon. The couple looks madly in love. Social media is buzzing with photos of what everyone is calling the wedding of the year. But sometimes, the most beautiful facades hide the darkest secrets. Sometimes, the most perfect love stories are built on the most dangerous lies. And sometimes, when those lies finally come crashing down, the consequences are more devastating than anyone could ever imagine. What you're about to hear is a true story that will completely change how you view the picture-perfect lives we see on social media. Trust me, you need to hear this story from beginning to end. Welcome to True Crime Family Corner, where we explore the dark side of human nature and the stories that shock communities around the world. I'm your host, and today we're diving deep into a case that rocked the Indian community in Toronto, Canada. If you're new here, please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell because we upload new true crime content every week. Trust me, you won't want to miss what unfolds in this story, so make sure you watch until the very end. On the morning of November 15th, 2023, what should have been the first day of married happiness became a nightmare that would shock the Indian-Canadian community in Toronto forever. The luxury honeymoon suite at the Fairmont Royal York Hotel, where dreams of happily ever after were supposed to begin, instead became the scene of a brutal murder that would expose lies, deception, and the devastating clash between tradition and modern desires. Hotel housekeeping supervisor Maria Gonzalez had seen many things in her 15 years of service, but nothing could have prepared her for what she discovered when she knocked on the door of the presidential suite that crisp November morning. The Do Not Disturb sign had been hanging for over 12 hours, and checkout time had long passed. Using her master key, Maria pushed open the heavy oak door, expecting perhaps to find newlyweds sleeping off their wedding night celebration. Instead, she found 24-year-old Priya Sharma's lifeless body sprawled across the marble floor of the expensive suite. The young woman's red silk wedding dupatta, which had been draped elegantly over her head just hours earlier during the ceremony, was now stained with blood. Shattered glass bangles, traditional symbols of married happiness, glittered like deadly confetti across the floor. The intricate henna patterns still visible on Priya's hands told the story of a bride who had prepared for a lifetime of happiness only to have it end in unthinkable violence. Maria's screams echoed through the hallway as she stumbled backward, her hands trembling as she reached for her radio. Within minutes, Toronto police swarmed the scene, blocking off what had been intended as a sanctuary of love. The wedding garland, made of fresh jasmine and roses, lay trampled and wilted near the body, its sweet fragrance now mixing with the metallic scent of blood. Priya Sharma had been the pride of her family back in Mumbai. With delicate features, expressive dark eyes, and an infectious smile that could light up any room, she represented everything her parents had dreamed their daughter would become. A software engineer who had moved to Canada 3 years earlier, Priya was supposed to represent the perfect success story, a daughter who had conquered the Western world while maintaining her Indian values. Her parents, Rajesh and Sunita Sharma, had sacrificed everything for their daughter's education and future. Rajesh, a retired bank manager, had sold family jewelry to pay for Priya's engineering degree. Sunita, a devoted housewife, had spent countless hours teaching her daughter traditional cooking and cultural values, preparing her to be the perfect bride. They spoke of their daughter with glowing pride to anyone who would listen, showing off photos of her modest Toronto apartment and sharing stories of the money she faithfully sent home each month. But the perfect daughter they thought they knew was about to be revealed as an elaborate fiction. If you're finding this story as shocking as I am, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button. Stories like these remind us how important it is to understand the pressures people face, and we'll continue exploring these complex cases together. In the hotel bathroom, police found 28-year-old Arjun Malhotra sitting on the marble floor, his back against the wall, staring blankly at the opposite wall. His hands, which had gently placed the wedding ring on Priya's finger just 12 hours earlier, were now bloody and bruised. His traditional white kurta was stained with what forensic experts would later confirm was his bride's blood. When officers tried to speak with him, Arjun seemed to be in a state of complete shock, offering only confused and contradictory statements. Arjun came from one of Toronto's most respected Indian families. The Malhotras had built a successful import-export business over 2 decades, becoming pillars of the local Indian community. They were known for their generosity, their adherence to traditional values, and their son who seemed destined to carry on the family legacy with honor. Arjun himself was considered a catch, handsome, successful, and seeking a bride who could help him preserve the cultural traditions his parents held dear. The wedding celebration the night before had been a spectacular display of Indian tradition and Canadian prosperity. Over 500 guests had witnessed what everyone believed was the perfect union of 2 suitable families. The ceremony had cost over $200,000, with no expense spared on flowers, music, food, and decorations. Traditional drummers had announced the groom's arrival, while Priya had been carried in on an ornate palanquin, looking every inch the radiant bride. As Toronto police launched their investigation, the crime scene told a story of tremendous violence. Blood spatter analysis revealed that Priya had fought desperately for her life. Defensive wounds on her hands and arms showed she had tried to protect herself from her attacker. The struggle had moved across the entire suite, overturning furniture and shattering expensive decorative pieces. A heavy crystal vase, part of the hotel's luxury amenities, had been used as the fatal weapon. Several hotel guests reported hearing loud voices coming from the presidential suite around 2:30 in the morning, followed by what sounded like furniture being thrown. One guest, staying in the adjacent room, later told police she heard a woman's voice raised in what seemed like desperate pleading, followed by a man's angry shouting. The sounds of the struggle lasted nearly 20 minutes before falling into an eerie silence that would haunt those who heard it. But the real story began 6 months earlier in the living room of a modest Mumbai apartment, where dreams of arranged marriage were born from the best of intentions and the worst of deceptions. The proposal had come in September 2023 during the traditional matchmaking season, when Indian families actively seek suitable partners for their children. The Malhotra family had flown to Mumbai specifically to meet potential brides for their son, armed with photographs, biodata, and high expectations for finding the perfect daughter-in-law. Rajesh Sharma had prepared for months for this meeting. He had borrowed money to repaint their small apartment, bought new furniture, and ensured that every detail would impress the prospective groom's family. Sunita had spent weeks coaching Priya on how to present herself, demure, respectful, interested in domestic duties above personal ambitions. When the Malhotras arrived at the Sharma home, they were immediately impressed by what they saw. Priya appeared before them in a simple yet elegant salwar kameez, her hair modestly braided, her eyes downcast in traditional respect. She served tea and homemade sweets with graceful movements, speaking softly about her desire to be a supportive wife and devoted daughter-in-law. "I have always believed that a woman's greatest achievement is creating a happy home for her family," Priya told Arjun's mother, Kavya Malhotra, during their private conversation. "My career in Canada has taught me independence, but my heart has always remained rooted in our traditions." Arjun, who had grown tired of dating modern Canadian women who seemed to prioritize careers over family, was immediately charmed. Here was a woman who had succeeded in the Western world but retained her Indian values. During their chaperone meetings, Priya spoke eloquently about wanting to give up her job after marriage to focus on family, about learning his mother's recipes, about raising children with strong cultural values. The families were delighted. Background checks showed Priya was exactly who she claimed to be, a successful software engineer at a reputable Toronto company with clean financial records and no apparent social complications. Her regular video calls home, always showing her in traditional dress in her modest apartment, had convinced everyone that she was living a simple, culturally appropriate life in Canada. What they didn't know was that every video call was carefully staged, every conversation meticulously planned, and every detail designed to hide a completely different reality. Before we continue with this shocking revelation, I want to remind you to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. The deception we're about to uncover will leave you speechless. The real Priya Sharma was someone her family would never have recognized. While she dutifully sent photos of herself in traditional clothes to her parents, her Instagram account told a very different story, one that only her Toronto friends knew. This private account showed a young woman living life to the fullest: designer clothes, expensive cocktails at trendy downtown clubs, weekend getaways to Montreal and New York, and a social circle that would have horrified her traditional parents. Priya's Toronto apartment wasn't the modest one-bedroom she showed her family during video calls. That was actually her friend's place, borrowed for the deception. Her real home was a luxury condo in the entertainment district, complete with floor-to-ceiling windows, modern furniture, and a wardrobe full of designer clothes that cost more than her father's annual income. The money she claimed to be saving and sending home was instead funding a lifestyle of expensive restaurants, weekend spa trips, and shopping sprees. Credit card statements would later reveal over $75,000 in accumulated debt from 3 years of living well beyond her actual means. She had convinced herself that marriage to a wealthy man like Arjun would solve all her financial problems while allowing her to maintain the life she had grown accustomed to. But the most devastating deception was the relationship she had been hiding for over 2 years. Rohit Kapoor was everything Priya's parents would have disapproved of: a 32-year-old investment banker who had grown up in Calgary, loved hockey more than Bollywood, and had never shown serious interest in marriage or children. Their relationship had been passionate but unstable, with Rohit repeatedly promising a future together while continuing to date other women and avoid any real commitment. "You know I care about you, Pri," Rohit had told her during one of their many breakups. "But I'm just not ready for the whole settling down thing. Maybe someday, but not now." Priya had convinced herself that Rohit would eventually come around, that his resistance to commitment was just a phase. When her parents began pressuring her about marriage, she saw the arranged marriage as a temporary solution, a way to buy time while maintaining financial security and continuing her relationship with Rohit on the side. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, Priya had actually grown more confident about her deception. She had successfully convinced Rohit that the arranged marriage was purely financial, that she planned to divorce Arjun after a respectable period while keeping half his assets. She had even maintained a secret second apartment that Rohit knew nothing about, planning to use it for their continued relationship after her marriage. "Don't worry about this whole Indian wedding thing," she had texted Rohit just days before the ceremony. "It's just a business arrangement. You and I will still have our real relationship." Rohit, who had initially been jealous about the marriage, began to see it as an adventure. The idea of having an affair with a married woman appealed to his sense of rebellion and risk-taking. He had even joked about attending the wedding reception as just another guest, secretly knowing he would be taking the bride home within weeks. But Priya had underestimated both the thoroughness of modern technology and the determination of a suspicious fiancé. Arjun Malhotra had not built his family's business success by ignoring details or accepting things at face value. As the wedding date approached, small inconsistencies in Priya's story began to trouble him. Friends in Toronto's Indian community mentioned seeing a woman who looked remarkably like his fiancée at various nightclubs and upscale restaurants, always dressed in Western clothes and seeming very comfortable in environments that contradicted her claimed lifestyle. The first concrete evidence came 3 weeks before the wedding when a mutual acquaintance showed Arjun a photo from a Toronto club's social media page. There in the background of a promotional shot was unmistakably Priya, wearing a short black dress, holding a martini, and laughing with a group of people who clearly weren't living the modest traditional lifestyle she had described to his family. When Arjun confronted Priya about the photo during one of their video calls, she had been ready with an explanation. "That must be from my company's annual party," she said smoothly. "You know how these Western companies force their employees to attend social events? I was so uncomfortable, but I had to go for professional reasons." Her explanation was plausible, and Arjun wanted to believe it. His mother had already sent out wedding invitations, deposits had been paid to vendors, and both families were deeply invested in the upcoming ceremony. Calling off the wedding would have been a social disaster that would have damaged both families' reputations in their communities. But the doubts continued to grow. More photos surfaced showing Priya at various Toronto locations that contradicted her claims of living a quiet, home-centered life. A friend who worked in the Canadian immigration system mentioned that Priya's financial records showed spending patterns inconsistent with someone who was sending money home to family. The breaking point came during Arjun's bachelor party, held at an upscale Toronto restaurant just 2 days before the wedding. Rohit Kapoor, emboldened by alcohol and curiosity about his girlfriend's soon-to-be husband, had somehow learned about the bachelor party location and decided to attend with his own group of friends. During the evening, Rohit struck up a conversation with one of Arjun's friends, not knowing who he was talking to. Intoxicated and boastful, Rohit began talking about his relationship with this Indian girl who's getting married for money, but planning to keep seeing me on the side. She's got her family totally fooled. Rohit laughed, not realizing he was describing the groom's fiancée to the groom's best friend. They think she's this traditional daughter, but she's been living with me half the time for 2 years. The wedding is just a business arrangement. Arjun's friend, Karan Singh, immediately recognized that Rohit was talking about Priya. The description was too specific to be about anyone else. The timing of the wedding, the family situation, even physical details that Rohit mentioned. Karan quietly recorded part of the conversation on his phone before confronting Rohit directly. "Are you talking about Priya Sharma?" Karan asked. Rohit's face went white as he realized his mistake. "Who wants to know?" "The groom's best friend," Karan replied coldly. The confrontation escalated quickly, with Rohit eventually admitting to the relationship, but claiming he had been trying to convince Priya to call off the wedding. Text messages on Rohit's phone, which Karan photographed before Rohit could stop him, told a different story. Messages clearly showing Rohit encouraging Priya to go through with the marriage while promising to maintain their relationship afterward. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell because this story is about to take an even darker turn, and you won't want to miss how this devastating night unfolded. Karan brought the evidence to Arjun that night, showing him not just Rohit's testimony, but the text messages that prove the extent of Priya's deception. The messages revealed not just the romantic relationship, but also Priya's financial lies, her real lifestyle in Toronto, and her detailed plans to continue deceiving both families after the marriage. Arjun spent that night pacing his hotel room, staring at the evidence of his fiancée's betrayal. He had 2 choices: cancel the wedding and face the social humiliation of explaining to 500 guests and both extended families why the ceremony was off, or proceed with the marriage and confront Priya privately afterward. His traditional upbringing and concern for family honor made the choice for him. The wedding would proceed, but there would be a reckoning on the wedding night. November 14th, 2023, dawned clear and cold in Toronto. Perfect weather for what everyone expected to be a perfect wedding. The Malhotra family had rented the ballroom of the prestigious Omni King Edward Hotel for the ceremony, with its crystal chandeliers and ornate decorations providing an appropriately grand setting for what was being called the wedding of the year in Toronto's Indian community. Priya spent the morning at an upscale spa with her female relatives, undergoing traditional beauty treatments and having her hair and makeup done by artists flown in from Mumbai specifically for the occasion. Her mother, Sunita, wept tears of joy as she helped her daughter into the heavy red and gold lehenga that had cost more than most people's annual salary. "My beautiful daughter," she whispered as she adjusted Priya's dupatta. "Today you become a bride, and tomorrow you begin your real life as a wife and mother." Priya smiled and hugged her mother, feeling a stab of guilt about the deception but pushing the feeling aside. She had convinced herself that she was doing what was necessary for everyone's happiness. Her parents would have their dream wedding and the social status of having a well-married daughter. Arjun would have the traditional wife he wanted, at least in public, and she would have financial security while maintaining her relationship with Rohit. Meanwhile, Arjun was going through his own pre-wedding preparations, surrounded by male relatives who joked about the end of his bachelor days and offered advice about married life. His father, Suresh Malhotra, was particularly emotional, seeing the wedding as the culmination of everything he had worked for in Canada: a successful business, social respect, and now a son married to a suitable bride who would carry on their family traditions. "She's perfect for you," Beta, Suresh told his son as they prepared to leave for the ceremony. Beautiful, educated, but still rooted in our values. Your mother and I couldn't have chosen better. Arjun nodded and smiled. But inside he was fighting a war between his love for his family and his rage at being deceived. He had spent the night memorizing every detail of the evidence Karen had shown him, planning exactly what he would say to Priya when they were finally alone. The wedding ceremony itself was a magnificent spectacle of Indian tradition. Priya arrived in a decorated car, looking every inch the radiant bride as she was carried to the mandip in an ornate palanquin. The pundit chanted Sanskrit verses as the couple circled the sacred fire 7 times, making vows that Priya had no intention of keeping and that Arjun already knew were based on lies. Wedding photographer Ravi Sharma captured hundreds of images of what appeared to be a perfectly happy couple. They looked so in love, he would later tell police. The bride was glowing, and the groom seemed proud and happy. You would never have guessed that anything was wrong. But there were subtle signs for those who knew where to look. Karan Singh noticed that Arjun's smile never quite reached his eyes and that he held himself with unusual stiffness during the ceremony. Priya's best friend from college, who had flown in from Mumbai for the wedding, later mentioned that the bride seemed unusually nervous, checking her phone frequently and seeming distracted during conversations. During the reception, Priya excused herself several times to touch up her makeup, but hotel security footage would later show her in a quiet corner of the lobby, frantically texting someone. The messages recovered from her phone were to Rohit. Can't wait for this to be over. Tomorrow we start our real life together. This is all just for show. Rohit had actually attended the reception as a guest, having somehow obtained an invitation through mutual acquaintances. He spent the evening watching Priya play the role of the perfect bride while sending her encouraging messages about their future together. At one point, he even approached the couple to offer congratulations, shaking Arjun's hand while secretly planning to steal his wife. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, both families expressed their joy and satisfaction with how perfectly everything had gone. The bride and groom were escorted to a waiting limousine that would take them to their honeymoon suite at the Fairmont Royal York Hotel, where rose petals had been scattered on the bed and champagne waited on ice. Everyone who watched them leave that night believed they were witnessing the beginning of a beautiful marriage. Instead, they were seeing the final act of a deception that would end in unimaginable tragedy. The presidential suite at the Fairmont Royal York Hotel had been decorated for romance. Rose petals covered the king-size bed, candles flickered on every surface, and a bottle of vintage champagne sat cooling in an ice bucket. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a stunning view of Toronto's skyline, and the marble bathroom featured a soaking tub filled with warm water and floating lotus blossoms. Priya entered the suite first, kicking off her heavy traditional shoes and sighing with relief at finally being alone. She moved to the mirror to begin removing the elaborate jewelry and hair ornaments that had made her head ache throughout the long day. In the reflection, she watched Arjun enter behind her, closing the door with deliberate care and engaging the security lock. "What a day," Priya said, attempting to maintain the charade of the happy bride. "I'm exhausted. I can't wait to get out of all this heavy clothing." Arjun said nothing, instead walking to the sitting area and taking his phone from his pocket. He placed it on the coffee table and opened the photo gallery, scrolling to the images Karen had taken the night before. "Before you get too comfortable," he said quietly, "I think we need to talk." Something in his tone made Priya stop removing her jewelry and turn to face him. "Talk about what?" "It's our wedding night, Arjun. Can't whatever it is wait until tomorrow." "It's about Rohit Kapoor," Arjun said, watching her face carefully. "And your 2-year relationship with him, and your real life in Toronto, and the fact that everything you've told me and my family has been a lie." The blood drained from Priya's face as she realized her deception had been discovered. For a moment, she considered continuing to deny everything, but the look in Arjun's eyes told her that he had concrete proof. "How did you find out?" she asked quietly. "Your boyfriend attended my bachelor party," Arjun replied, his voice tight with controlled anger. "He got drunk and started bragging about his girlfriend who was getting married for money but planning to keep seeing him on the side. He was talking about you, Priya. He even showed my friend your text messages." Priya sank into a chair, her elaborate wedding outfit suddenly feeling like a costume in a play that had gone terribly wrong. "Arjun, I can explain." "Explain what?" he interrupted, standing up and beginning to pace. "Explain how you've been living with another man while telling my family you're a traditional girl who wants to be a housewife? Explain how you've been accumulating massive debt while claiming to send money home to your parents? Explain how you plan to make a fool of me and my entire family." Hotel security footage would later show that this conversation began around 11:30 at night, with both voices initially calm and controlled. But as the confrontation continued, the volume began to increase. "You don't understand the pressure I've been under," Priya said, tears beginning to flow down her cheeks. "My parents expected so much from me. I couldn't disappoint them by admitting I was struggling financially or that I wasn't the perfect daughter they thought I was. So you decided to destroy my life instead?" Arjun's voice was getting louder now. "You were going to take my money, ruin my family's reputation, and continue cheating on me with your boyfriend. Did you think I would never find out?" I hoped maybe over time you would understand," Priya stammered. "Maybe we could work out some kind of arrangement where we're both happy." This was the wrong thing to say. Arjun stopped pacing and stared at her with an expression of absolute disgust. "An arrangement? You mean you wanted me to be content being married to a woman who was in love with someone else? You wanted me to pay for your lifestyle while you continued your relationship with Rohit behind my back?" The argument continued to escalate, with Priya alternating between desperate apologies and attempts to justify her actions. She told him about the financial pressure, about Rohit's promises to marry her someday, about her fear of disappointing her parents. But each explanation only made Arjun angrier. "Do you have any idea what this will do to my family when the truth comes out?" he shouted. "My parents spent their life savings on this wedding. They've been telling everyone in our community about their perfect daughter-in-law. When people find out you're a fraud, we'll be ruined." "No one has to find out," Priya pleaded. "We can make this work, Arjun. I'll end things with Rohit. I'll be the wife you want me to be." "You'll end things with Rohit?" Arjun laughed bitterly. "You've been planning to continue seeing him after our marriage. You texted him during our wedding reception. You've been deceiving me from the moment we met, and now you want me to believe you'll suddenly become honest." Around 1:30 in the morning, neighbors reported hearing what sounded like furniture being overturned. The argument had moved beyond words to physical confrontation as Priya tried to leave the room and Arjun blocked her path. "I want to call my parents," Priya said, moving toward the hotel phone. "They need to know what's happening." "Your parents?" Arjun grabbed her arm to stop her. "Your parents who think their daughter is a saint? Your parents will be destroyed when they learn the truth about what you've been doing in Canada." Priya tried to pull away from him, but his grip tightened. "Let me go, Arjun. You're hurting me. I'm hurting you." His voice cracked with emotion. "Do you have any idea how much you've hurt me? How much you've hurt both our families? You've made a mockery of everything we believe in." The struggle intensified as Priya fought to break free from his grip. In her desperation, she grabbed a heavy crystal vase from the table and threw it at him, missing but shattering it against the wall. The sound of breaking glass seemed to snap something in Arjun's mind. "You want to fight?" he yelled, grabbing her by the shoulders. "After everything you've done, you want to fight me?" What happened next would be debated in court, with forensic experts and psychological professionals trying to understand how a wedding night conversation had escalated to deadly violence. But the physical evidence told a clear story. Priya had defensive wounds on her hands and arms, indicating she had tried to protect herself. Blood spatter patterns showed she had fallen multiple times, struggling to get up before being struck again. The noise continued until approximately 2:45 in the morning, when hotel guests reported that the shouting and crashing sounds suddenly stopped. The silence that followed was described by one neighbor as more frightening than all the noise that came before it. By dawn, one young woman's dreams of having it all had ended in tragedy, and two families' lives had been destroyed by a deception that spiraled completely out of control. When Toronto police arrested Arjun Malhotra that morning, he offered no resistance. He sat quietly in the back of the patrol car, staring out the window as news vans began arriving at the hotel. Within hours, the story had spread through social media and international news outlets. Indian bride murdered on wedding night after groom discovers double life. The investigation that followed painted a picture of two young people trapped by cultural expectations, family pressure, and personal choices that had led to an irreversible tragedy. Priya's secret life was exposed in detail, with police interviewing Rohit Kapoor, her Toronto friends, and financial institutions that revealed the extent of her deception. Rohit, who had initially tried to deny the relationship, eventually admitted everything to police. "She told me the marriage was just for money," he said during his interview. "She said she loved me and that we would be together after she got what she needed from her husband. I thought it was exciting, like something from a movie. I never thought anyone would get hurt." If you're still watching, please hit that subscribe button because stories like these need to be told to help us understand the complex pressures that can lead to such devastating outcomes. The trial began 8 months later, with Arjun charged with second-degree murder. His defense team argued that he had acted in a moment of extreme emotional disturbance, pushed beyond his limits by the discovery of his wife's comprehensive deception. The prosecution countered that regardless of provocation, nothing justified the brutal violence that had ended Priya's life. Priya's parents, Rajesh and Sunita Sharma, were destroyed by the revelations about their daughter's secret life. "We thought we knew her," Sunita testified through tears. "We were so proud of our successful daughter in Canada. We never imagined she was living such a different life." Arjun's family faced their own devastation. Their business suffered as clients distanced themselves from the scandal, and they were ostracized by much of Toronto's Indian community. "We raised our son to respect women and honor marriage," his mother, Kavya Malhotra, said in her victim impact statement. "We don't understand how it came to this." The trial revealed the toxic combination of factors that had led to the tragedy: cultural pressure to maintain family honor, the stress of living between traditional and modern worlds, financial desperation, and the inability of either young person to communicate honestly about their needs and expectations. After 3 weeks of testimony, the jury delivered their verdict: guilty of second-degree murder. Arjun was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 15 years. As he was led away in handcuffs, both families wept, not just for the lives that had been lost and destroyed, but for the preventable tragedy that had torn apart their communities. The case sparked difficult conversations within Indian immigrant communities about the pressures faced by young people trying to balance traditional expectations with modern realities. Counselors and community leaders began advocating for better communication between generations and more support for young immigrants struggling with cultural identity issues. Priya's story became a cautionary tale about the dangers of living a double life and the importance of honest communication in relationships. Her death underscored how quickly deception can spiral out of control and how cultural pressure can contribute to tragic outcomes when people feel unable to be truthful about their lives and choices. For those who knew both families, the tragedy served as a painful reminder that behind the facade of perfect arranged marriages and successful immigrant stories, real people struggle with complex emotions, conflicting desires, and the challenge of living authentically while honoring their cultural heritage. Today, both families continue to grapple with the aftermath of that terrible night. Priya's parents have returned to Mumbai, unable to bear the memories that Toronto held. Arjun serves his sentence while undergoing counseling to understand how his need for honor and control led to an act of irreversible violence. The luxury suite at the Fairmont Royal York Hotel has been renovated and returned to service, but staff members who worked that night still remember the morning when a celebration of love became a scene of unimaginable tragedy. The case remains a stark reminder that sometimes the greatest danger comes not from strangers, but from the collision of expectations, deceptions, and emotions within our most intimate relationships. In the end, 2 young people who should have had long, happy lives ahead of them became casualties of a culture clash that neither knew how to navigate, leaving behind devastated families and a community still struggling to understand how a perfect wedding became a perfect storm of violence and loss. Thank you for watching True Crime Family Corner. If this story impacted you, please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss our latest uploads. Share this video with others who might benefit from understanding these complex cultural and social issues. Remember, behind every true crime story are real people whose lives were forever changed. Until next time, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next episode.